Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Hi and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Jouar, and today is Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. It is Samsung Galaxy Unpacked Day. We've got some new S24 devices here, and I've got Blake Gaiser of Samsung with me, so we got the authority in the matter. I want to kind of talk to you about those new phones and mostly about the Ultra because my audience is very, imaging centric. Blake, thanks for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about these.
Awesome. So let's see. Give us a quick overview. I think there's a lot of AI, which is really cool because that's really a thing right now. And some of it is on device and some of it is in the cloud. And then, of course, some cosmetics tweaks and, of course, new hardware, new processor, Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and the big differences in the Ultra camera, which I think we want to talk about. So where should we start?
Gosh, there are so many places to start with the S24 series. We're really excited to talk about Galaxy AI. What Galaxy AI is, starting with the S24, is really a collection of various features that are powered by AI, that are helping us communicate better with each other, take better photos, edit our photos better, share them better. It's helping with productivity as well as, with battery performance. And so there's just so many different things that Galaxy AI touches upon with the S24 series. And it's really kind of hard to start with.
Let's pick the top three that you think are the most significant, knowing my audience is tech savvy, early adopters into photography, because, as you said, there's so many of them. And maybe we can pick maybe one on device and two in the cloud, because I think the cloud ones are a little heavier in terms of lifting, but the on-device ones are great because you can be in airplane mode and it just works.
Absolutely. So, it's hard to pick three, especially, it's kind of like picking your favorite kid. Very difficult to do. But, one of the very exciting things that, we're excited to launch with the S24 series is a new way to search for things with Circle to Search. And that's something that people are like, I don't have a problem searching right now.
Right.
It's not something that seems difficult. But with this new Circle to Search, it's as simple as a long press on the home key, and then you can circle anything on your screen. And what you're going to get back from that is a generative AI overview as to what it is that you are looking for, and then a lot of what you'd get from like a Google search page. So why is that cool? Because if you're on Instagram and you find something really neat chapel or something that a friend posted, and they don't tell you much about it, simply two actions, long press, circle, suddenly find out it's this cathedral in Paris.
Cool.
And right there happens instantly. And then you can follow up and have follow-up conversations, and it knows that you're still talking to that. So you can say, where's the nearest airport? And we'll say, here's the nearest airport, and here are flights from where you're at to where you're going. And the best part about it is you're never leaving the app. So for those like myself who can find themselves doom scrolling on Instagram, if you leave the app and then come back, first thing it does is it jumps you all the way up to the top and you've kind of lost your place there. But because you never leave it, you just swipe that off and
nice.
And you can circle images, text,
So this is on device or is this on the cloud?
So this is a cloud.
And so this is using a large language model, presumably, right?
Yes. It's combining a lot of things. It's a multimodal search is what we call it. Okay. So it's able to search for images. You can search an image for text. You can search text for images. Layering in that generative AI, it's kind of taking all these different things that are able to be used today, tying them together in like a neat package that is just so intuitive and easy to use.
Awesome. So, my media colleagues and I were wondering, because we're getting our devices shortly, but if you use gestures instead of the buttons, how does the action work for that? Do you know?
You just hold your finger down where the home key would be.
Where the little thing is if you have it enabled. Okay, Great. At the bottom, the little pill.
Yep.
Great. Awesome. We were all wondering about that. We figured that's what it was because, I think Google Assistant by default is like that on some phones, but we weren't sure.
Yeah. And so, moving on to things that are on device. And actually something that I really like to, call out is that we have all of these different features available on the S24, but we're also empowering our customers to use them how they want to use them.
Right.
So you can go into your settings, you can turn them off if you don't want to use them, or you can make it so that your phone only uses on-device AI. So you're completely in control within our advanced intelligence features to know what is using AI, how it's being used, and how you want it to be used.
And you told me earlier today that this little logo we see here in video, for those of you watching the podcast on Patreon right now, you get the extra bonus features. And the extra bonus feature is that there's a beautiful display here in the Samsung podcast suite of the icon, the logo, that's used in all the various AI features on the phone, correct?
Yeah, it's there to let you know what you're using. And it's, very clear iconography. So you can see it and you can press on it to actually do a lot of the things. So making it as user-friendly as absolutely possible.
Awesome. Before we jump into the beautiful S24 Ultra because of the camera stuff, let's quickly go over some of the changes on the S24 and S24 Plus, because obviously, big update there too. Of course, the big one to me is the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and then we have Exynos in some markets, but also bigger batteries on both, a Quad HD display on the Plus instead of 1080, and then we've got flat sides, which is a bit of a design change. And a lot of improvements in imaging, but not necessarily because of the hardware, because of all this AI stuff. And tell us about that.
To touch on things, 100 milliamp hour increase in the base model for the battery, and a millimeter increase in the screen. And that was done by actually decreasing the bezels on the screen.
Yeah.
So the screen is more usable. It, fills up the entire.
And it's still a small phone. For those of you looking for a small phone, folks, I've held this phone and wow.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then with the Plus, the Plus had probably the biggest improvements to it. To your point, it went from a full HD display to a Quad HD display. It's a millimeter larger. It has 200 milliamp hour longer battery life, as well as starting at 12 gigabytes of RAM. With a 256 and a 512 storage variant. All of these devices also get max 2600 nits on the screen.
Right, the screen brightness.
So the screen is a lot brighter. You put Vision Booster in there, it gives you another perceived about 300 nits. So you're watching this thing outdoors in the brightest lights. It's very easy to see everything that you want on those screens. To your point, Ultras are really exciting. Launching it with a titanium bezel.
Yeah, let's grab one each and show it off a little bit.
Yeah.
So you probably, I'll just do this. It'll be closer for the camera. This is ultra wide, so it'll be really close when I do this. But this is the awesome purple one, and you can see this is kind of like a goldish titanium. Is that actually the natural titanium color that you're keeping, or are you customizing the color on each? I never really noticed that.
So on, I believe, the violet and on the gray, it's the natural titanium look. There is some color on the yellow and our black. As well. Okay. And so, to your point, we continue to listen to our customers and they love the S Pen.
To me, this is I hate to say this, but even now it's still the killer feature. No other phone has this.
Which is
there are some mid-range kind of crappy phones that have it, but no flagship has this feature. It blows my mind that, clearly you own this.
Well, and with having that totally flat screen, you got full usability of that S Pen.
And that's a big difference, right? The flat screen. And yet, to me, I'm recording an S23 Ultra. I just edited all the photos from this morning with it. And it doesn't feel that different yet. It is. Yet it is. You're right. You get a lot more to play with the pen and with your fingers. And the bezels are really small, too.
Bezels are really small. There's a great hand feel to it. It's, slightly wider, slightly shorter, but it just gives you a really good feel. And especially with that satin finish that you're feeling on that frame, just has a really great feel.
Is the eraser tip of the S Pen also titanium?
I do not believe so.
Because if it isn't, it's so well matched. It's kind of amazing to me. All right, let's talk cameras because this is the big deal, right? Like I'm a big camera person. I love the Galaxy phones for cameras. You know, I also review cars, EVs, and do car tech coverage. And I always bring my Galaxy Ultra with me, whatever model I have, whatever year it is, because it's the most versatile camera that I have because of the multiple zoom levels. And so, you know, the big news is you swapped the 10x 10 megapixel optical zoom telephoto, the second telephoto, for a 5x 50 megapixel. So you still have that 3x in the middle. And I think this is the important part. A lot of people go like, look, you look at other phones, right? They might have a 1x and then a 5x, right? But what do you do in the middle, right? Now with you guys, you had the 200 megapixel sensor, which gave you a lot of room to zoom in from 1x to 5x, or, you know, in the case to 3x. But if you didn't have that, which the competition doesn't, what do you do? So you kept that 3 megapixel in the middle, but you made the 5x zoom really large sensor, meaning you can sensor crop, I presume, to 10x and beyond. Obviously, the 100x still works, right?
Correct. So a lot of improvements, you know, from a hardware standpoint, you nailed it on the head. That 5x 50 megapixel zoom is just a phenomenal zoom. We saw that our customers were using 3x and 5x zoom the most. So let's give them the best 5x experience out there. And, you know, to your point, looking at, you know, 10x optical, you're getting as good or better 10x zoom year over year as well, especially with the larger pixel size,
Right.
more light, larger OIS, so much more stable. So, you know, that 5x also does really neat things like 8K video at 5x.
Oh, yeah, right.
So that's awesome. And, you know, when you're talking video, we've also tied it into the gyroscope. So the phone itself knows if you're moving or if what you're filming is moving,
Right.
and it's able to show that, you know, perfect shot. And, you know, to that point, some of the really cool things when we're talking about AI with the camera is that we, on the S23 series, we had cognitive AI built into the front camera lens.
Yeah.
And so that was where the camera could identify, am I taking a picture of a person or a building, or, you know, what is it that I'm taking a picture of? And being able to then adjust contrast and color, you know, because of that. Well, with S24, we put that all on all of the rear lenses. So you don't have to be a, you know, professional photographer, because your phone is recognizing what kind of image it's looking at. It's able to adjust the settings. And then when it takes photos, it's actually processing that at the individual pixel level.
Right. And you were doing binning before that, right?
Yeah.
That's
So
what I
we
was
would
referring to
bin, and so we
earlier.
would bin multiple pixels together and then, you know, process that as one, which, you know, obviously works great. It takes a lot of brain power in order to process at the individual pixel level. But the benefit is, if I'm taking a picture of you, it knows where the last part of your shirt is and where the background is.
So you get much better, you know, separation.
A lot
the
better
segmentation
separation.
and stuff.
Contrast is much better with our adaptive pixels and the cognitive AI. It's recognizing color tonality and giving you much truer colors, especially with our Super HDR kind of built into it. And then, you know, when it comes to editing your photo, it's a lot easier to edit your photo when you have a great photo to start with.
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to pull out an object, because this has such crisp, you know, contrast to it, it's able to really easily pull out that object that you're wanting to pull out and then start manipulating with.
Makes sense. And so, yeah, look, I'm looking forward to putting this through its paces because I use that telephoto a lot, especially for car shots. I shoot by default at 2x. For all my shots, and then I go bigger if I need to zoom in on something, because you get more of that natural depth of field thing going on. Very rarely do I do 10x, but the 5x is going to be really welcome, because I call this the zoom gap. You know, the competition has it between 1 and 5, but you had it between 3 and 10, and now you filled that, and by making this large sensor croppable without, you know, too much lossy, you know, it's like basically a 2x. You know, zoom on digitally on the 5x, gives you the 10x. You have no loss of quality there, but you also improve the low light performance of the 5x because you can pixel bin, right?
Correct.
So you've got this, all of a sudden, you not only have 1x, 3x on the 2x crop on the 200 megapixels, so 1x, 2x, 3x, you get a 5x that's really high quality in low light. And I think that's where we're going to see, I expect we're going to see the biggest differences day to day. For those of us who shoot a lot of photos and are really into photography with this phone, is going to be low light at 5x.
Absolutely. And actually one of my favorite things to do, I will videotape my son's soccer game. And one of the problems that has always kind of irked me is that, when you start a video, you're stuck on that lens until you stop it and change it. But when you're on ultra high def, 60 frames a second, you actually have access real time to every single lens. So you can do macro, you can do 1, 3, 5, and 10, and even swap it over to your selfie. And you can press a pause button. So if it's not happening, at that time and you don't want to keep eating that video, just pause it and you can go right back into the action. And one of the really cool things that's on device is what we call instant slow-mo. So a lot of times you don't know when you want a slow-mo. So to your car thing, if you're videoing a car and it starts peeling out and then driving off and you're like, I want to get, a slow-mo of that shot.
Do it.
You just, once you've, done a normal video, you just long press on your gallery on that video. As long as you long press, it will turn that into 240 FPS.
So it's interpolating using AI, right?
Correct.
And this is on device? So
Correct.
Wow. So you only need, great. So it's going to be nice and fast.
So that's one way where you can get the perfect shot even when you weren't expecting to get the perfect shot.
Let's wrap up a little bit. And with one last feature I think would be really cool to talk about in terms of photography is any kind of AI post-processing, stuff you can do in the photo editor. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy chipset, it has a pretty dramatic increase in the NPU. The neural processing unit is the brains of AI. And so we got, two really kind of cool things. One is that when you bring up that photo, you get instant suggestions. So it will look at what that photo is doing and what it's taking a picture of, and it will give you 3 of the most relevant things that you might want.
Right.
Remove reflections or shadows or remaster.
Oh, yeah. We had that last year with the glasses. That was really cool.
Yes.
Now I bet you it's really fast.
Exactly. Really fast, much better. And then you have generative AI capabilities. So say, you took a picture of, somebody jumping, you can cut them out, move them up to the top of, the picture. You can make them bigger, smaller, upside down if you want, and it will fill in the background of where that was.
Yeah.
And what's great about it too is that anywhere we use generative AI in our photography, we'll put these same 3 stars in the lower left corner of the picture as a watermark.
Yeah.
Very subtle, but just says, hey, this was
edited.
And that goes into the metadata as well.
Oh, cool. It's just a nice thing because honestly, that's becoming kind of like, uncanny valley otherwise. Well, listen, we could go on. There's so much here, and I'm really looking forward to it, to playing with it, finding out more. But thanks so much for giving us a taste of it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
And, kind of talking us through some of the more, technical details, because that's what my audience loves. So thanks so much for being on the show.
We'll bring it out again if we want to dive even deeper.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
All right. And we're back with Nirave Gondhia here of Hot.tech. Hi, Nirave. I had to put it in there. Just to,
that shameless plug. One of many.
We'll talk about that later. But we're here in the Samsung Galaxy S24 podcast studio. Thanks to Samsung for letting me record a segment with Blake earlier and giving us the space to talk about other things. So, S24.
We're here.
We're here. We know all about it now. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
It's kind of crazy because it feels like yesterday that we were talking S20 Ultra.
So, this is the thing, which is weird. Is because the S21 was kind of different then, or S20 was different then, 21, 22, 23, they're kind of I feel like it's like Groundhog Day, but improved. I feel excited about it, but it's still Groundhog Day.
It's definitely Groundhog Day. I will say that in a lot of conversations we've had with them in the past have said that they generally operate on, say, a 3-year product cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The timing of this makes me think that we would have maybe we're in the 3rd generation of, say, the 200 megapixel, and that's the cycle they're looking at. But I think, very similar to conversations we've had recently about foldables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That there's a need to recognize when iteration needs more.
I think we're at the verge, we're at the edge of what needs to happen. I think it's contextual, right? If you're looking at it from another market than our market, North America, this is very evolutionary, but solid, right? You can't go wrong with these phones.
They've refined it we all know the 23 Ultra is like one of the most. It's
recording right now.
super stable. It's a great camera. It has great software. Everything's refined. What's really interesting about this is, and it's very similar to 15 Pro Max for me, the iPhone, because when I first picked that up, the first thing I said was, "Oh wow," because you think about it as a purely evolutionary thing. They switched some materials.
But it's also our perspective because we get all phones.
Yeah,
right.
But as soon as you pick this up, so I've given my brother-in-law has an S22 Ultra, which I gave to him last year. I think if he picked, and my sister was like, "I'd love it, but it's top heavy and a little too heavy for me." But she wants that camera, even though she's got a 23 plus. She really wants that camera. What makes it super interesting now is, and it's the first thing I noticed when I picked this up a few days back. Like when
Grab
I first,
one.
when I first
There's a
looked
bunch
at it.
here. You can have fun with them.
This thing, what makes it super, super interesting is it feels significantly lighter and more well balanced.
The balance
in
is
the
the first thing I
hand
noticed. Yeah.
because of the titanium build. The S23 Ultra is an amazing phone, but the camera itself makes it very, very top heavy.
Yeah.
Here, the distribution, I think that's the best way to put it. The weight distribution across this is significantly better, where there's definitely bulk and weight to it, which you'd expect from everything they're including inside it. But it's actually a really, really well-balanced phone. And I think this is now a signal that just great that we're back in an era where design and weight proportion matters a lot.
But it's sweating the details, right? And I think that's the thing. Like when you get to a point where you can go like, okay, we're iterating, baby steps in a way. Although, I think we're looking at it from the, year to year. But if you when I went from an iPhone 11 to a 15 Pro Max, let me tell you, I finally experienced what the consumer experienced.
Oh, this is
4 years, right? So if you come from an S20, right, or S21 of any kind,
even a 22 Ultra, I would argue, even a 22 Ultra is going to blow your mind.
And I think this is what I think a lot of people are like, it's very iterative, but then they're like, but then again, the way it feels in hand, I was surprised actually how I like the flat screen on this. Because the rounded edges have defined the Note / S Ultra series for so long that I was like, oh, come on. How it's not going to be the same, but it is. It's actually better in my opinion.
Same here. So what makes it interesting is you've seen flat where, because the edges on this aren't flat, it does. And that's something I remember, I can't remember, in the last couple of years, it wasn't Samsung, but others, you get that sharp feel off the edge where it's super uncomfortable to use gestures, for example.
Yeah.
This, because of the rounded edges and the way that it's really well, there's a level of engineering in that piece of it where it just feels perfect to come and use gestures without catching your finger.
That's good.
The design of this is beautiful. And I'll say I loved it. I love the fact that it's, I love the titanium. I love the weight. I think bolder choices could have and should have been made.
Colors, yes. Colors are a little dimmer than I'd like. I like the purple a lot. That'd be the one I'd want. Of course, I don't know what I'll get.
I said this the other day, with the yellow. If you're gonna, the
yellow should be really yellow.
It should be. A yellow, a titanium yellow that's not muted would have made it.
Don't think it was come out as 2 or 3 bespoke Samsung store colors that we.
So I think there's an.
Maybe we'll find out.
I think there's an orange is one of them, and I feel like that honestly could have been the statement color that you want people this is the kind of phone that looks amazing, but very little. If you're walking down the street, you can't.
So
immediately go.
There's an analogy to be made here. This is a problem in the car world too. I hear this from car manufacturers all the time. We're like, where are the bright, awesome colors?
Everyone buys black.
Everyone wants gray, black, white, and the dealers only want to stock gray, black, white because that's all they sell. And since they're, the gatekeeper for a lot of companies, well, then the manufacturers only make, and it's sad. It's like, why can't people be more exciting?
I do give them, I'll give them props for it makes logical sense. It makes logical sense that you need that. And honestly, every company goes with the tried and tested is the diplomatic way of putting the tried and tested.
I have a message from my audience. Be more bold. And not just with your cases, with your phone purchases to start with.
I want to have a little heart back, which I think you'd appreciate. We've gone past an era where phones, you walk down the street and you can spot a phone a mile off because of its color, its profile. The only one I think of the majors in the US right now that actually does that, I would say, I'd say two. I'd say to an extent, Apple, if you're bold enough, and you're not talking Pro Maxes here, we're talking you're bold enough to go, you've got 15 product in, you go product red, they're bright yellow and those. Yeah. And Google. And Google's more of a design choice because of the,
the pastels.
Less of the pastels, more of the camera bar design that looks like it was better out of Futurama.
Yeah. It's pretty iconic, honestly, now.
You can see it, you can spot it walking down the street. But what's really interesting is still no one's done what we saw way in the past, which the only company that ever really made colors truly spectacular was Nokia. And I feel like there is someone could do that.
Here's the thing: they did machine polycarb.
Yeah,
like plastic, but machined.
No. Well, they forget the polycarbonate. Don't forget the N8.
No, I know.
N8's the one that shows you can do metal.
I'm just saying that the polycarb was just like, come on, the Lumias, all the Lumias, But anyway, look, as iterative as this initially seems, I feel that there's a lot of detail that's went into this to make them, when you close up and personal, it's better than expected. And of course, then there's all the tech, right? You get a better chip, more battery, better displays. The camera, I'm really, really looking forward to trying this camera system.
So what's
on the Ultra? Super
interesting. We had the briefing, and I've been very transparent about this. Coming out of that, I was like, it's fine. I'm going to be excited because it's a 24.
I was excited because Blake was on.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's going to be good. And then as soon as I've held it in my hand, it took me literally a couple of minutes to go, oh, this is one of those where don't judge a book by its cover.
Yep.
Because the in-person experience is significantly better than it may come across. And like you said, I tested out some of the camera stuff. Love the change to 135.
It's, it eliminates what I mentioned to Blake earlier in the show. It eliminates this zoom gap, right? So Pixel and iPhone 15 Pro Max have that zoom gap. 5, right? And the can be okay at 2x because it's pixel cropping. But at 3x, at 4x, and at 5x, you're back to normal.
And that's where the BBKs do really well.
Wait, we're going to talk about that. But then you have a 12 megapixel 5x on, because at 6 and 7 it starts falling apart again. Pixel at least does one better by having 1x, 2x is okay, 3x, 4x, 5x good. And then because it's a big sensor, you can do 7, 10, 12. I think it starts falling apart at 20. But then so does this. I mean, realistically, you can do 100x, but nobody does that. You know what I'm saying? For us, for people like us who care, I don't do more than 20x on these phones.
I've done S20 Ultra.
Depends what you're doing. Right?
You can do some funky stuff at 100x zoom. I'll tell you that much.
So the point I'm making though is that there's no gap now because it was going from the zoom gap was on the S23 and 22 and 21 Ultra because it was 1x, 2x, okay, because you had 108 and then a 200 megapixel sensor, you crop them. And then you had 3x, okay, great. And then the 4x, and a 12 megapixel sensor, and the 5x now. But before that, it was like, up to 10x, right? Like at 7x, you were in deep trouble on the S23 Ultra. Now at 7x, you're going to be laughing on this thing because your 5x is just cropped a little bit.
But what's interesting,
on a 50 megapixel sensor.
On a 5x, it's the right zoom, and because 10x is such a gap that it's never actually. I found I'd only ever use 10x if I needed a shot for an article. never used it in person. And then I'm willing to go and take some crazy shots and zoom in on nonsense. Most people would have stuck at 3x and gone, I wish
This
I had
is the
that
title of the
much more.
podcast, Zoom In on Nonsense.
I love it. This is my contribution.
But I'm pointing at a producer, so we make a note of that. But look, I agree with you. I'm still maintain, and this is where we're going to jump on to other topics soon, that is the company is doing a better job still. They're doing 1x and 3x and 6x. And all with big sensors. And I think that because then you can do cropping on those, so you get 1x, 2x, 3x, 6x, 12x.
So
we'll,
yes, we'll jump to that. And I have many thoughts, having just taken 400 or so photos with one of those company's phones in Vegas.
But before we jump that, what were you?
Let me go back to this.
Exactly, that's what I mean.
What they don't do, and this will be some touch on later, what they don't do is what I still like about what Samsung does here. Everyone else is running, aside from one of them actually, which we'll talk about, like majority of phones are running a 3-camera array.
Yeah.
This is still the 4-camera array that has made the Ultra series really popular.
It's made it Ultra.
It's made it Ultra. As we'll talk about later, Ultra's become a name that signifies 4 cameras, and that's all down to Samsung, which others are now trying to jump on the bandwagon of in that
For sure.
But what I really I think at 135 it's perfect. Did some brief testing at 10. It's good. But really, probably the thing I'm most excited to then see come to your 23 Ultras, if it's possible, is the instant slow-mo. Because that is finally fixing one of my biggest issues with slow-mo on a Samsung camera. And then, the main reason I love a Samsung camera is because it still is the only one that has the widest array of incredible portrait mode photos.
Yes.
Like, okay, seriously.
What's it called? Color point. Color point.
If you look at my avatar everywhere on the internet.
Candy already.
Color point. My avatar everywhere on the internet is a color point.
Dude, you color pointed me last year, remember?
It was
in New York.
Yeah.
And that with the lights, we all Carl Conrad was in there, Michael Fisher.
I got all of you guys.
And I'm posing away. It was amazing. And you're like, S23 Ultra, color point. It was great.
It's great. That for me is why there's always a Samsung camera in my pocket.
You are a Samsung fanboy though, so.
I think I have. I mean, I've used every single one since the S1, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much proves my point. So anyway, look, I think these are great phones. I'm looking for choosing, and I think I'm also particularly excited because, look, we talk about Chinese phones all the time because my audience is international and global, and there's people in India who buy phones, people in Western Europe who buy phones, in Africa, in other parts, in Southeast Asia, right? And they have access to a whole plethora of other cool phones. We're going to talk about some of them. But the reality is this market is very bipolar, right? Or bipartisan, I like to call it. It's like Apple and Samsung. And then you've got, OnePlus, Google, Moto kind of like going like, hey, we exist. And my point is, anyone can walk into a store and come out with this and absolutely come out ahead. Come and be happy as pie. And this is good. It's not me, because I like to be like, the underdog and weird. But for people who want a phone today and have an S20, as you said, earlier, this is amazing.
What I will say, we talked about the camera, right?
Right.
Yeah. Actually, the thing that really also excites me is some of the AI stuff. And the reason is, you know how much I dislike a Pixel. I've been to a Pixel event and told Google people I dislike the Pixel.
You mean you dislike this one?
Absolutely.
I hate this case, by the way. Sorry, Spigen, or whatever you are. I just picked it up for cheap and I don't like it. I had a carbon fiber case on there. It was great, but it didn't wireless charge.
What I'm going to briefly say is about that, and this is the segue. Google does some really good stuff on its phones, and then makes material design choices that, to me, are a waste of space and are then falls down the throat of people.
See, this is where we disagree.
But
I like white space.
And here's why this is exciting me. I have a Pixel 8 Pro in my bag that I charge maybe once every month when I need to take it to an event so I can sit there, record, and transcribe.
And now you're getting
stick it back in my bag, eventually take the transcription and do something with it.
Yeah.
that's gone. Because having tested out the transcription on this I did this in the demo where there were 3 people talking. I would say it's not live in the same sense as Google, where it will transcribe in real time. Once you finish recording, it will transcribe.
Okay.
But it is spot on. It hit, including the overlay of 3 different people talking at once over each other as a test.
Mm-hmm.
It hit about 97% of the words properly. You then take that combined with the camera, and then some of the circle search stuff. And I've used a bunch of, I think back to when we went to Meet Tech last year, and I was sitting there, I used the Open to do all my photos.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had a Pixel on the table recording and doing all of this. Now I feel like there's an ability to do everything in one device and not have to make that sacrifice.
Welcome to the world of us having all the phones. We can have a Pixel for transcription. We can have a Galaxy for the cameras. We can have an iPhone for video. We can have, anyway. So what you're trying to say is that, you do what I do. You carry all the phones and then you use the ones you want for what you need. Now you have one less to use.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I think this will replace a few different functions in different places as well. Of course. I then go on to the other one that really got me as well was when you're doing the interpreter stuff, via calls and stuff.
Oh yeah, we did that demo.
But I came back from Dubai, and I was in a very far-flung part of Dubai where actually there was broken English. But then you think about all the trips we've done to China.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's an absolute game changer to be able to do that and then not have to. Before, really, the only one that would do it, you'd need to carry a Pixel Fold. And for aforementioned reasons, i.e. the word Pixel, I don't want to carry a Pixel Fold.
Yes, I don't blame you on that one.
Yeah. So when that comes to the Fold series, for the Fold 5,
it
for
will,
example,
inevitably.
That's suddenly oh wow, you've just enabled probably the biggest key selling point for a Pixel Fold, for example. And I can see that on paper, the AI stuff looks iterative. And I had to think about this on the way over. It looks super iterative, but it's actually, I think, been done in a really tasteful way that makes it super interesting.
I think what they've nailed is that the user experience is going to be really seamless and easy for people. What bothers me about the implementation of AI on Samsung's phones is that I would have expected more to be on device. Right now, they're kind of leaning a little too much on the cloud for my liking. Because a lot of these large language models with Gen 3, I was like, okay, 80% of the AI will be on device. But no, it's like, I look at the feature list, you've seen it in the press materials, and it's still a majority off device or partially off device. And that's okay. It will get better, but I was hoping a little more. And this is just me as an engineer and as a nerd talking. And we're talking about why I carry a Pixel almost every show. I hate the freaking Tensor chipset, but I'm completely held hostage, and my couch is treating me well. So I've got Stockholm syndrome about all the about the color features. So hold for me. Screen call. Like if Samsung added all that stuff that Google has for call management, I'd be done.
I agree. But what I will say is, really and truly, I just ignore all phone calls like most human beings these days.
Well, sometimes you can, sometimes but what I like about it is if one of the lovely PR folks from Samsung call me today because something's wrong with the podcast room and I don't have their number, I can hit call screen and I don't really pick up the call. Yeah. Google talks to them and then they say, whoa, it's important. It's podcast. I'm with Samsung. And I'll be like, oh, crap. And I pick up the call. But you see, on other phones, Mike, I'm a big OnePlus fan. And, I can't do that on OnePlus. And
I agree.
It vexes me.
I think in the past, we've seen Google focus on software-driven features in a world where virtually everyone else was focusing on hardware-driven features. So where hardware changes, hardware iterations were the predominant deciding factor in improvements between generations. What makes this interesting is Samsung used to be, years back in the TouchWiz days, one of the people who worked on software-driven features first.
There's a word I haven't heard in a while I didn't want to hear again.
Don't hate on it. I liked it, okay?
I like
It was-
One UI better.
Oh, I love One UI. I think it's fantastic. But we're seeing the return to some of the things that made Samsung truly, like, really, really great in the early days. Like, really good hardware. But now they're willing to battle and invest in the software side of features.
100%.
And I don't
not
think...
in a gimmicky way. Do you
Yes.
remember that TouchWiz gimmicky stuff? You're gonna give me heartburn. Listen. Speaking of, as an aside, since we love tangents on this show, bad names for OSs: TouchWiz, Fun Touch OS. Excuse me, Vivo. Hello. Wow. What? Wow.
Best name? Oxygen OS.
Oxygen. Absolutely.
Love it. Worst name? Color OS.
So I want to wrap up Samsung because we haven't talked much about Apple because, well, this is an Android podcast mostly, but, you know, we also like to make fun of Apple. And for once, I would like to say that I'm a little surprised about the S24 and 24 Plus having slap sides now, because I feel like I kind of wish it was the other way around. I wish Samsung had introduced it, Apple had copied it, the slap sides, because it almost feels like when I was holding the S24 in my hand, I'm like, this is one, like just a little bit, like one dynamic island and one camera pod redesign away from an iPhone running Android. And I'm like, on one hand, that is delightful. But on the other hand, I want Samsung to be the ones, you know, defining what a design language for a phone is.
Yeah, but you know what? Like, I think back to 10 plus years in retail. If I was doing product, I'd do the same thing. We've both done product. And
Yeah. If
we
it
know,
works, yeah.
we know that people love the feel. We know that every Android OEM struggles to get people to convert. If you can give them the same in-hand experience with good software, Google, this means don't just try and rip off an iPhone, try and make good software in the process, please. And you can build a physical experience that doesn't feel like a change. You've conquered one of the biggest battles. What makes it super interesting is, for the first time as well in a while, the Plus is its own phone.
I know. I like that a lot. And Blake and I talked about that. I love that we're getting a better display. We're getting, you know, we're
Getting its own
more
identity
RAM.
again.
Yes. For a while there, it was just like, it's plus size. And now it's more like, no, it's the kind of like cranked up a notch.
It's the middle ground.
It's the middle child has grown up.
What I want to see in the next one, for example, even though we're not even technically into this one yet, is I actually want to see the Plus camera evolve slightly to be its own camera array.
Yes.
Where you have 3 devices, you're running that. Maybe they go 1.5 on that or whatever they do. Because I think about my sister who's used a Plus for the last 4 years that I've given her, you know, bought her. The Ultra's just that little bit too big still and stuff, but it's like there's an opportunity there to build something that no one's doing, which is build that middle ground at that perfect price point.
I
that
think
everyone
the
will be happy with.
Ultra is also not the most friendly, you know, designed for. Like the Ultra still has that nerd vibe, which I love, right? You love, but I think that, you know, you give the average person out there a Plus and an Ultra next to each other.
100% the OnePlus.
Plus, yeah.
Could be worse with the Ultra.
And of course, unless they're stylus users or S Pen users, and they've used a Note all this time, like from the early days. Look, I want to talk about 2 other phones because we have them, and they are one is completely out, and the other one is we can talk a little bit about it, but not about reviewing it. So that's the OnePlus 12 and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. Speaking of Ultra, yeah, you brought them good because mine are in my bag. Because
I bought the 12.
I'm not
my Ultra. I left on my bed.
Well, anyway, we have too many phones, folks. Clearly. So look, the reason I'm bringing them up is because I think BBK Group in general, but OnePlus in particular, is on a bit of a streak here. I mean, you know, maybe. But I'm incorporating Oppo in here. Like I'm incorporating the Find X. So we know the Find S7 Ultra is public now. We can't talk about the 12 too much, but I'm just saying I feel like they're onto something.
So
there's a vibe.
This harps back to my phone of the year last year.
Oh yeah, our phone of the year.
The OnePlus phone, the OnePlus Open.
Yeah.
The first foldable that made me actually put down the Fold 5, the Samsung Fold.
And you're a Samsung fanboy, so
I've used
can you imagine
every
what
single
happened?
Samsung phone.
The internal torture that must have been occurred.
The only other time this has happened where I have two dailies, always an iPhone because I wear an Apple Watch. There's always the health stuff and all of that. Diabetic apps work better, a million reasons. We don't talk about that. The Android phone, that I'm not reviewing, the one that's my daily of choice, for the best part of 20 years, has always been a Samsung, apart from last year when it came the OnePlus Open, and I still use it every single day. I use it, I've scratched it, and I refuse to give it up. The only other time this happened, and this is an interesting one, was when Huawei brought out the P30 Pro, and I went, whoa. Now, what is great is what happened to follow that was bad, because obviously we know what happened with Huawei, but it forced Samsung to innovate.
Yes.
And I love it.
And I think you're actually tying it back to something in a very clever way, because I was going to mention that earlier. It crossed my mind when we were talking that who started the quad camera craze? Huawei P40 Pro Plus.
Yep.
And, kudos to them, because I think that's why we got the S Ultra series,
100%.
the way we did. Because at the time, there wasn't, all the sanctions, and they looked like they were going to take over the world. And I'm not talking just North America, world, the North America.
I genuinely thought they were going to be the number one, and they were going to be.
And remember,
the
AT&T was going to kind of carry the Mate 20 and stuff. Anyway, the point is, kudos to them for pushing. And this is kind of why I am happy to see BBK Group having a moment.
So Open, probably the most complete phone I've used in a very long time. You couldn't find a real wireless charging. Miriam and wireless charging, we don't talk about that. This has wireless charging. You're happy, I think.
I know,
Yeah,
but it's supposed to be there. I'm not supposed to be complaining about it.
Anyway, to go back to it. And it was the first ever time I've had every single one. First time I've ever had a OnePlus phone as a daily driver, which I told their PR folks, and he was like, what? I was like, yep. Night and day difference. And then, without going too far, they're not just having one phone is a moment. Remember, we'd seen N2 Flip, all of those before.
I mean,
one phone is a moment.
Yes.
Two phones is there's something here. And multiple bangers in a row is a streak. And they are providing. I said this in our group chat yesterday, in the big group chat. I genuinely believe that if they were marketers and they actually put marketing money into it, they're the only people in the Android world who could truly compete with Samsung. And their approach to cameras, great. The OnePlus software, we're talking generalization, not 12 here, but OnePlus software, excellent. Hardware, there's so much to really like about it.
So on the 12th, the verdict is still out. But here's the thing. We know the specs. It's essentially the camera system from the Open. I mean, there's some minor changes. You can look at the specs. But essentially the camera system from the Open, so you can draw your own conclusions, with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in a non-folding form factor with wireless charging. That's basically what you're getting, right?
Yeah, you're getting everything.
It's a really solid package. So, hopefully it'll live up to that. But we can talk about the Oppo Find X7 Ultra. And I'm sorry, but this is my little muse right now. My little muse is the Oppo, because 4 50 megapixel sensors, 4 of them, 2 of them are Lithium sensors from Sony, all right? One of them is a Sony IMX 890. That was the main sensor on phones a year ago. And then on top of that, we have, let's give us 2 periscopes. Okay, so there's a ultra wide at 50 megapixel. There's a massive 1-inch sensor for the main sensor. Holy crap. At f/over 1.6, right? Or something crazy like that. I don't know. It's like, and then there is a 3x telephoto periscope at 50 megapixels that does technically up to 6x, then just short of 6x, and lossless almost.
Also, 6x,
a pixel crop.
For context, for everyone else, last year I used the Find X6 Pro. 6x on that, and I will say the same with this. This is better, but just to give you context, the Find X6 Pro, 6x hybrid zoom on that, just as good as the
that's what
10x,
the Open does.
10x periscope on the S23 Ultra.
So the Open only stops at 3x periscope at 64 megapixel and does great 6x and 10x and even 20x.
It's phenomenal.
So now imagine they've taken that 6x now and made that a periscope. Then now you can do 12x by cropping, and then you can go probably to 30, 40. at a level that is, I think, more acceptable than what you get out of a 5X or
based on, I've used it for about a week. I've taken a few hundred pictures on it, which is the main reason. There are obviously issues, and at a price point, it is way more expensive than it's going to be way more expensive.
We don't know the price. This is a China only phone.
I think it will equate out to about $1,500 US.
So,
but Samsung, let me say, 25 Ultra when you need to redefine the camera system, I actually don't think we need 200 megapixel anymore. Let's let's change the fact that it's 200 megapixel, which we don't need. And honestly, go for the 1-inch sensor. Go for the parity in this size, because you won't have differentials.
We want all the sensors to be 50 or 48 or 64.
So 50, 48, 64, 1 inch on the main one.
Big sensors.
And you will have a camera that is, in 98% of markets that you're in the world, the best. There are phones right now that do challenge this. OnePlus is going to be a challenger regardless, etc. But Oppo isn't bringing the Ultra outside of China.
And nobody has an S Pen, so, But the point is, look, I think if you look at the context of where this phone came out, the Oppo, right? Like in China, we're both using Chinese models, so we had to install Google Play stuff. And it's a bit of a hassle. And of course, some of the bands don't work. I'm on T-Mobile, and half the time the phone has no service. You're like, that's a problem. And you're not going to buy this phone.
Mine runs on a 5-day SIM.
You're not going to buy this phone here. But if you are in Europe, if you are in India, if you are in Dubai, if you are in China, if you are anywhere else and you can get that phone, this phone raises the bar, just like the Huawei P40 Pro Plus raised the bar, just like the S20 Ultra has traditionally raised the bar, just like arguably the iPhone 15 Pro Max raises the bar. And I think that you cannot, there were some moments like the Find X6 Pro last year, like Oppo's 13 Ultra, sorry, not Oppo, Xiaomi's 13 Ultra last year as well. And who knows what the 14 Ultra is going to bring. But now it seems to me like we've kind of stabilized at this really high plateau in terms of photography.
What I think we're going to say quickly, just to wrap that up, is all of these phones that we just mentioned, they're all mostly China-only phones. And I think we have a 24 Ultra, great phone. I mean, it's going to be a great phone.
Mostly people can buy it.
Yeah. What happens over the next 12 months across, I do think we'll see some of those phones potentially start to come out in, whether it's under different names that are more Western friendly, that are maybe Oppo releases under OnePlus or however they approach it, etc. What happens over the next 12 months will be a defining moment, much like the stuff that happened with Huawei was, the stuff that happened with the S2, S3 for Samsung was, and much like the iPhone was. This will set the order for smartphones for the next 5 to 10 years. And I personally, whilst I love where we're at with this, if Samsung's going to rethink the Ultra, they have the playbook of what to do.
Yeah.
And crucially,
absolutely,
if you want to increase the price on it, I think you could get away with it slightly.
Right. Yeah.
Because the value is there.
And I think it's the same with Open, right? Like, I think Open has shown that there can be a competitor to the Z Fold, and that, Samsung needs to crank things up a notch. I don't think they're at that level yet with this. To me, I think the Z Fold really needs improving for next year, for this year, the 6, right? Because the Open has shown what you can.
Competition brings innovation.
I think as much as the Oppo shows a few things like dual periscope, 50 megapixel across the board, and all 4 sensors, I still think this is going to be much closer, whereas the Open is so much better, right?
Yeah, I think what we'll find with this is I will end up picking up this over the X7 Ultra, even though the Find X7 Ultra has a technically better product, just like Google had a technically better product for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
This will be the more complete experience as a phone, which I'm like 98% of the world still use it as a phone.
Yes, 100%. So the wild card to me is the OnePlus 12. For those of you who are not using an S Pen, because that'll support US bands, it'll be available in North America. So let's see how that pans out. On that note, we should wrap up. And Nirave,
Hello, darling.
Darling. Prosecco, darling.
I would love some Prosecco
Well,
right
we'll
now.
make that
Nirave,
happen
yeah.
later on tonight. Would you tell people where they can find you on the internet? All the wonderful, hot things you're doing.
You know what's really interesting?
What?
Every time I come on your podcast, I feel like the outro changes.
Well, I kind of keep them on their toes. And
No. My outro.
Your outro.
Where you can find me. But the good news is that's no longer the case. You can find me at hot.tech and across all social platforms at hot.tech spelled out. That's HOT.DOTTECH. And I'm also at Nirave on many of them as well. So,
And it
thank you.
stands for House of Tech.
Yeah, House of Technology. But really, I have a feeling, I think we all know it's just going to end up being called Hot Tech.
Hot.tech, yeah. And but I want to point out that I've had you on almost systematically for every Samsung release now. I've had you on for the S23 Ultra last year at SF. And then
Before.
for the
folds.
we
Yeah.
did the folds. It's become a thing. So let's keep it going.
Done deal.
All right.
See you in 6 months.
So, folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl, TNKGR, like the comic book character. Drop all the vowels, and you get my handle for everything. Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and Threads. Threads is really my thing right now. And so, if you want to chat with me and Nirave, just find us there and chit chat with us. The podcast is at mobiletechpodcast.com, where I have all the platforms there, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Spotify. Who knows what Google's doing with their podcast thing? I think he's rolling into YouTube.
I think it will be another killed by Google product.
Exactly. But if you subscribe wherever you want, where you can. And otherwise, the website will tell you what to do. And then youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how to use YouTube. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment, all the good YouTube stuff. I've got some videos coming there, hopefully some unboxings and stuff. So stay tuned. And then Patreon. If you're already watching this on video, thank you very much for supporting me. I appreciate it. For those of you not watching me,
Why not?
I know, first of all. But secondly,
You missed all these great visuals.
you get this a day or two in advance. But on top of that, you get to see us. And like this studio
This
is
is,
incredible.
honestly, this studio is worth
Like,
it. Right.
thank you, Samsung, again, for making it happen. Thanks for Blake to coming on the show and chatting with us. It's pretty awesome. And so, look, patreon.com/tankgirl, patreon.com/tnkgr. There's other tiers if you can't afford the video tier. Check it out. And that's it. I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. So as you know, I'm constantly reviewing multiple phones, and while that's fun, it also means I'm constantly spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. That's where Mint Mobile comes in, and that's who I'm partnering with for today's podcast. If you also want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. As tech-savvy early adopters, you've probably heard of Mint Mobile before, but let me quickly tell you how awesome their service is. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around and waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current device and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM free of charge. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, lightning fast 5G, and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link mintmobile.com/mobiletech to get premium wireless starting for $15 a month. That's mintmobile.com/mobiletech. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you now.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, blooper.
The bloopers are the best part of this.
And I want to thank you, Nirave, for being on the show yet again.
No worries. Thank you for having me. To be honest, I was like, as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah. Next time, just send the calendar invite. Don't even ask.
Producer.
Yeah, just be like, this is your time and date. This is your roll call. I'll be like, cool, job done.
Awesome. Well, folks, stay tuned. We'll have another show next week. And until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye.